Renovating Retirement with Charlie Jewett. Oh no, I think I'm about to have another episode.
Hey everybody, Charlie Jewett here with the Renovating Retirement podcast, coming back with another In the Trenches episode. This time we're going all the way to Kansas, which has slightly different weather than San Diego and Hawaii. Is that true, Nate?
Oh, slightly.
So this is a little bit different because the other people that I've interviewed for the In the Trenches are either on my team, so Ian Grove and Abby Duenas, or partnered with me like Andy Guzzi in Chicago. So you're going to be the first person that's not a part of my team, just somebody I believe in, somebody I know and trust, and I'm happy to advertise. Well,
I feel honored.
I'm honored to be a friend, man. So let's also give, because you also have a different background with me. You weren't first another advisor that I would see at events or somebody that kind of came into my life and became an advisor. You were actually on the team, the support team that was supporting me. And you had what, I don't know, 120 of us, something like that?
Yeah, right around there.
So let's start there, because that gives you a different perspective into some of the things. I mean, have you heard every podcast I've done, or are you a couple behind now?
No, I have heard every podcast you've done.
Unbelievable.
Even the recent rant.
Even the recent rant. You've heard that one, right?
I feel you on that too.
Oh my goodness. How much income do you want? This much. Okay, you can afford it. Let me think about it.
We have literally just solved every single thing you said you wanted to happen, and you're like, I got to think about it.
Exactly. I don't know why that doesn't happen in restaurants. You know, what would you like? A steak? Okay, we have them. All right, let me go home and think about it. This doesn't happen. I don't know why. It's unique to our industry. Okay, so let's jump into this. So I started super edgy and angry, 2.5 years ago. I'm like, I'm the guy that's going to give the industry a spanking and that, you know what I mean? A lot more songs and craziness. And, my life changed. I changed as a human being. The industry hasn't really changed. But I was talking about how dark it is out there and how most advisors don't do what's best. And by the time the client gets to us and we review the financial plan, I've never seen a financial plan that I probably would even call a financial plan. They certainly aren't planning for long life, short life, rough life, sick life, into the next life. It's just more risk with the side of fees and cross your fingers and kind of hope, right?
It is. And here's what's interesting about that. I feel like that's still what we're seeing. Whenever I analyze portfolios, I call it my resuscitation report. There's a few things that go into that. But yeah, whenever we analyze someone's current, I'll put plan in quotation marks, it is pretty much that. I call it the hope and the prayer plan. It's let's just stick everything in stocks, bonds, mutual funds and hope everything works out. And it's almost without fail, it's somewhere around a 60-40 blend, which the industry calls that a, quote, balanced portfolio. And in my opinion, I don't consider that very balanced at all.
All securities.
It's all securities.
That'd be like saying let's be like the movie Super Size Me. Only eat at McDonald's, but have a nice blend of eating everything on the menu, and then you almost die in 30 days.
Exactly. So yes, we're still seeing that. And by and large, the majority of financial planners out there are skewed to the accumulation years of your life, like when you're working.
Yep.
And so everybody's portfolio is set up that way. And as we start entering into retirement and people are wanting to be safer, they just don't have, the right licenses or access to the right products to be able to offer their clients what they're actually looking for. They're trying to, but they're doing it with products that aren't even built to be in that part of their life.
So a lot of times I tell people, listen, advisors are undereducated. Whether it's ignorance or immorality, it doesn't really matter. We've just got to give you the best financial plan. When I got in the industry, I was absolutely shocked. Later in the show, I'll ask you your experience, but I was just dumbfounded how it wasn't taken seriously. I was from in my past, I'd been an electrician, so I knew kind of a little bit about blueprints and the client comes up with their dream and the architect designs it and tells all these different industries how they can work together to make this dream come true. And I come in as the electrician and have my set of blueprints. And my job wasn't to give them a new vision or tell them what to do. It was to put the wires where they're supposed to be, right? Or come back at like the most authoritative I could get is to come back and say, listen, there's something in this plan that doesn't work because we just found a wall or whatever, I get in the industry and it just looked like nothing, like no blueprints, no plan, no general contractor, and all the subcontractors were deaf and mute and blind and didn't talk to each other because your mortgage guy doesn't talk to your estate planner, who doesn't talk to your insurance guy, who doesn't talk to your joker broker. So I came up with merit planning, MERIT, mortgage plan, estate plan, retirement plan, insurance plan, tax plan.
Yeah.
And just like, so I'm interested from your perspective, because you knew 100 to 120. Well, you knew more than that, but you were working directly with 100, 120 of
Oh yeah, about
advisors.
1,100 maybe total offices.
So 1,100 offices at unquestionably probably the best place they could be in the industry as far as the most education. And I want to know did you find that to be true? Like, we're not throwing anybody under the bus, but my guess is out of 1,100 offices, I might trust, less than 5% of them with my money or whatever. And it doesn't have anything to do with whether they're trustworthy or not. It has to do with the industry doesn't require much to get a license. It doesn't require much to go work with clients.
Absolutely. And I would say it is more of a case of just ignorance because, and get me wrong, like there are, of the advisors that I worked with, we did work with the top of the top. So the numbers are definitely going to be skewed towards these people knew their stuff.
Right.
And what I'm finding is, I'm sorry?
And you guys were teaching us our stuff too, as opposed to other groups that were similar to yours that didn't have that level of education.
Yeah. And absolutely. And what's interesting, even though having access to all of that, Charlie, listening to your 150, am I the 151st episode? Second? I don't know, somewhere up there, right? So you've got 150 under the belt. And I got to say, even consulting the number of advisors that I did, I still learned a ton from a few of your episodes. I was like, oh, okay. Well, I didn't know that. I'll give you one big one, the lever inside life insurance that you could pull to lower the commission for the agent.
Yep.
I was not aware of that until, a couple years ago. And so that's a big lever that's been being pulled ever since.
It's the answer to everything bad written on the internet about cash value life insurance.
Yeah, it is.
It's crazy. Yeah. And people don't realize that. Well, people don't realize that. If you look at my book of business right now and you look at the life insurance, some of it's paying us over 10 years, little tiny amounts per year, some over 6 years, some over 3 years. Some pays very little at all because of that lever. All of those are less comfortable than getting a big giant chunk of money up front, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. But yeah, to answer your question, the vast majority of them that I see that are, let's just say, outside of the group that you and I work with, and who I used to, work with, being the one that was, helping you and all that. Outside of that, the majority of them I see, it is just blissful ignorance. They were taught a certain way. Actually, here to give you a specific example, an advisor that I've got that's working with me, who actually right out of college started working for one of the big wirehouses, and everything that he said about what he was taught is what you and I know. How they're taught one way. They're said, here you've got all these revenue sharing funds that pay us kickbacks. Those are the ones that you should use. I mean, they don't say it as blatantly as that, but what he said was they would say, you know what, these are what we need to promote right now. And I mean, you can use other stuff, but this is going to be best for the company, best for you, and therefore best for the client. And it was always in that order.
Yep.
And so I always found that very interesting.
And you've probably heard me say this, although I tend to be calmer than when I first started my show 2.5 years ago. I tend more towards the ignorance versus the immorality. And I probably started just being like, everybody's an immoral piece of junk. You know what I mean? But I call them evil geniuses because I'm dumbfounded. I'm in my 14th year, and I'm dumbfounded every day how hard it is for people to move money from familiar to unfamiliar, even if familiar is terrible and unfamiliar has everything they're looking for. And what I mean by that is we go, somebody brings in the portfolio. They just have statements and a pie chart and a popular name on the top of it, right?
Yep.
And then lies about how much money have been made in the last, 5, 10, 15-year periods because they're using average rate of return. You go, okay, let's talk about long life. How much guaranteed income could you take, or when are you going to run out, or what's safe? We don't know. Fails, right? Okay, short life. If one of you predeceases the other one and only gets one of the Social Securities and is then after 2 years a single taxpayer, so in a higher tax bracket, less deductions, maybe a pension goes away, whatever. With this type of a plan, cross your fingers and hope and have it all in stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. What income can that person have, and can they afford the higher taxes and living without that other Social Security? I don't know. Plan fails the short life test, right? And you go through rough life, go, all right, whatever. Portfolio does a pretty good job on rough life. It's like, if the money's there, it's accessible. Yay, right?
That's pretty much every one of them. That's all it really covers.
Sick life, nothing. Nobody's throwing in any more long-term care. And man, if you're draining a portfolio at $8 or $9 grand a month during a couple of down years in the market, it'll just disappear on you. Plus taking the regular income, you need to pay your bills, right?
Oh yeah.
And then the next life, can you leave the amount of money behind to loved ones that you want? Well, you can leave the leftovers, but you can't decide. You can't purposefully leave. So the people come in, and it's like almost 100%, right? Paying high fees, and you and I have both done shows on revenue sharing agreements. They give you a disclosure. Well, they're supposed to give it to you, but there's a disclosure that says we're going to basically rip you off, or give you not stuff that's priced the best for you but pays us the most.
It'll say virtually all of their transactions involve revenue sharing paying companies.
Yeah,
virtually all.
So how is it possible? I mean, I want to know who came up with this marketing plan to get such an incredibly giant group of intelligent people to have plans that don't accomplish anything they want and are overpriced, and make them so scared to move money that when someone from a different industry comes along and says there's something better, they go back to the person that set up the bad plan and ask them advice on it. That's like a plumber tells you how to fix a leaky sink, and you're like, let me go talk to my roofer.
Exactly.
What is it? How did they do that?
I don't understand. The decision-making process just in general, I'm not going to say for everyone, but for certain people, I feel is very flawed. That, someone has to have both trustworthiness and competence in order to be a trusted area of expertise. And when I say that, it's like, you know what, I got a buddy of mine. I would let him watch my kids, all kinds of, never have a problem with that. He's trustworthy. He is a great person. Awesome. But when it comes to advice on finances, I wouldn't go to him because he doesn't have the fruit on the tree.
Mm-hmm.
And he's never exhibited any expertise in that area. So he might be a great friend of mine, but why would I consult him in an area that he knows nothing about? Yet I feel like that happens a lot of times, not only going back to their, current financial advisor, but even asking their brother-in-law or their son who, he's not in the financial industry, but he weighs in on all the conversations, which I'm always happy to talk to them about that. But if they're going to sway you one way or the other based on what they think when they have no experience in that area, that's what I don't understand, that part of the decision-making process. It's like, yeah, get second opinions, get all that but get it from credible sources who know what they're talking about, because they may have preconceived ideas or biases as well.
Yep. And you and I know the big firms are basically they're basically large psychological manipulation systems. The one big one that I always pick on, I think, has a 42-point touch system that they have a name for and written their own software and everything, that basically is just like the commercials we see. Oh, they're going to go to your funerals and they're going to hold your cat and kiss your baby and stuff, which none of that has anything to do with earning returns or low fees or lowering taxes, which I don't even think those firms talk about lowering taxes, right? Which leads to our other favorite question, or let me talk to my CPA about it. CPA, they don't even take any training on
CPA. I prepared taxes for 6 years.
Yeah.
There was no classes, nothing on how to invest anything, about what different types of accounts can do different things. This blend of investments will get this type of return. There was no investment talk whatsoever. All taxes.
Yep. And it mostly, if you have seen the same experience I have, it's all saving to people taxes this year, so they'll write the check for $350 and come back next year.
It is,
because
we are your hero if we can reduce your tax liability this year. Forget about all the other years. If it's this year, I'm your hero.
Postpone. Right.
Yep.
So you were working for this company, working for all these agents. I'm sure you got your license and had your toe in the business and kind of did both for a while. But
I did pretty much right away.
What made you interested in being a financial advisor? Or what made you want to make the switch?
Well, I've always wanted my own business, Charlie. I mean, I grew up on a farm, and that's its own business, but that is a hard business. Rewarding, and I'm glad I had the experience. I mean, gosh, my parents are phenomenal people. I actually just got back from Cancun. I took them to Cancun for a few days to check off a few items on their bucket list, and I did it knowing that they probably wouldn't do that on their own. Their idea of a vacation is like camping,
Yeah.
Get some tents and go to the lake and camp. And so I knew that this was one of those things that they probably wouldn't do their on their own. And my mom validated that. She's like, I'm so thankful you took us on this. We had great memories. We probably would not have done this on our own. So we checked out some deep sea fishing for my dad, some riding some horses on the beach for my mom. So that was awesome. And now I just forgot what your question was.
Oh, just It was like, what do you want
Why
to do,
did I
with
do
mom
this?
and dad? Yeah, no. What made you
Okay.
want to get into the industry? What
Yeah, so
are you heading towards? Like you couldn't afford that unless you did
well,
something like this, or
yeah, well, that's part of it, but right, but I always wanted my own business, but I did not want that because while it was great, honorable people that we worked with, neighbors, everybody, it's like good salt of the earth people. Man, there was the finances just weren't there.
Yeah.
My first memory of money, if anybody's listened to any of my podcast, I told my mom she could sell all my Ninja Turtles, all my Ninja Turtle video cassettes if it would help out the farm.
wow.
Because at 6, I picked up on the fact they were selling everything, it seemed like,
And
that
from
year.
your age 6 till now, farmers have been squeezed 10 or
Yeah.
15 times harder.
Yep. I mean, they almost had to file bankruptcy at one point, took night jobs for about a decade to keep everything afloat. So they didn't have to file bankruptcy. My dad was a cop for a decade, working the graveyard shift. Mom was working at a convenience store. So it's like, you've got 6 kids. You're farming during the day, trying to raise the kids and going off to a job, trying to get a couple hours of sleep before you head off to your night job.
Wow. Yeah.
So like that's how I grew up. And I knew I did not want to struggle that way, but I understood through reading, and I guess basically I kind of got a hunger, and I kind of just always kept coming back to the financial industry. I might gravitate away from it and do something else for a little while, wait tables or whatever, but I always ended up somehow coming back to the financial industry. I started doing taxes before I was even out of college. And I just had that burn to find out, how do people make money? How do people keep money? Those that make it, how do they not lose it? And so that's why I just kept coming back to this industry. And then so when the consulting the financial advisors job came up, I mean, I jumped at it. And what finally made me decide to go out fully on my own, leave the consulting thing behind and focus just completely on my practice was the vision that I got from working with y'all and realizing that the vast majority of you're great people. You're wanting to do the best for your client. And most of you even have the licenses where you're legally required to do what's best for your client. And then I also noticed that by helping people in the right way, this is also an industry where we become, financially compensated for that as well. And I was like, this is it. It has everything that I want in a business, a lifestyle. I get to help a ton of people in an area where they have in retirement. Charlie, you've probably had that feeling in the pit of your stomach from financial stress before, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think everybody has. I really think there's like a specific spot in your stomach that's like reserved just for that feeling.
Yeah. Yep. The dollar sign hole or something.
Yeah, exactly. The good dollar sign gland or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so I understand how retirement can create that feeling for a lot of people. I mean, we're only supposed to do the exact opposite of what we've been doing our entire lives, right? We're getting a paycheck and we're saving our money. And then retirement comes around, paycheck stops, and now we're told to spend that money.
Right.
That's a hard flip to switch, or switch to flip, however it goes, for a lot of people. And so our goal is really to take that feeling in the pit of the stomach that I'm so familiar with, take it away from. I don't want them to have that in retirement. We want to create strategies using the experience that we've had from all these different advisors, our own practice, and just make sure that is not, that feeling is a complete, I want to say, it's gone. They don't have to worry about it.
Yeah. There's no reason to. And I always tell people, you hear me say, like, if you won the game, like, just go enjoy your winnings. Like, that's what was so weird about the episode you're talking about yesterday. Because the person had way more than the 1.3 million needed to buy. I mean, $7,000 a month guaranteed income forever, no matter what the market does, and continues for your spouse when you die. That's no joke as far as like income in a lot of parts of the country, right?
Yeah, you have won retirement at that point.
You have won the game. And I'm telling you, I didn't mention, the whole net worth on the show, but there was plenty left over for increase and play and all that kind of stuff. Now, let me take this somewhere different that I didn't know I was going to go, because I didn't realize that you'd done taxes for 6 years. So I can actually do some things with you that I couldn't do with other advisors. So when you hear me teach differently about mortgages and about the creation of tax deductions and tax planning on purpose to offset IRA distributions and things like that, that probably makes more sense to you than someone who's never done taxes before, because I'm sure you've seen a tax return with someone who has an expensive house and like, dang, you know what I mean? Like $4,000 a month, you have $48,000 deduction. That's sweet, right? Or it just eliminates all their taxes. And I have a book coming out called Better House, Lower Taxes.
Yeah.
Written, it's finished, it's all ready to rock. That basically says if you're coming up on, or you're in the time where you have to take money out of IRAs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Already have good income or are afraid the IRS might raise taxes, which most of us are, and you have no mortgage, like you paid your house off. Not only is that does that represent a huge problem in your life, potential problem, it represents a huge opportunity, because even though Trump just changed this, you can still sell that house you're living in and buy another one for up to $750,000 using a mortgage, and the entire payment's tax deductible, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And so just picture this in your mind for a minute, because this is contrarian, and this is not what your grandparents taught you to do, but the world has changed. What your grandparents taught you to do is pay off the house and never pay it again, and you basically have this giant inheritance strategy on accident. Like whatever the thing can appreciate to when you die, the kids get the entire thing, right?
Yep.
And all that home equity sitting inside of it isn't earning any rate of return. Then you've got these IRAs and 401ks earning rates of if you're trying to find financial advisors to earn you more rates of return and compound your tax problem quicker for you, basically. So grow them as big as you can, right? If you can find an advisor that takes it from 500 grand to $1 million, yay, but you don't realize all the home equity would have done a better job than this. But anyway, you've got this these IRAs that you're either taking distributions because you want to or because you're required to. If you sell the house with all the equity, the dead equity sitting there doing nothing, sell that house and buy another one for up to $750,000 with a mortgage. The equity that you got when you sold the house, is sitting in the bank. Okay, it's now investable. We can put it in places like annuities or cash value life insurance and grow it tax free and do all kinds of things in these tools that have been beating the market. And then all of a sudden you're like, but Charlie, I have a mortgage payment. That's not wah. That's like put on a party hat and sing, I have a mortgage payment. Because if you pay that mortgage payment with the IRA distributions or 401ks, you have to talk to your CPA. Neither Nate or I are doing taxes anymore. Compliance guys, stop joking on your fettuccine.
Correct.
Right?
Yep.
We're not doing taxes, so we would work with your tax advisor. But for many people, that's going to eliminate most, if not all, of the taxes on the distribution from the qualified accounts and make sure they're not paying taxes on their Social Security income, which is called the tax torpedo.
Yes. Yeah, I can definitely follow that line of thinking a whole heck of a lot better. There's definitely a lot of benefits to doing that.
How many advisors, if you took all the advisors in the country and called that like 100%, right?
Yeah.
How many of them do you think not only would know how to teach that strategy, but would have ever even thought of it or come across it in their training?
2?
Does that mean you?
Yeah, it's like, you, me, and the other guys that you work with that I know also. And, I'm sure there's a few that have listened to your podcast now and are utilizing that. But yeah, that's about it.
I didn't realize how many advisors were listening. I had to start a whole wing of the company just to recruit advisors.
Yeah,
and have a place to put them because I didn't.
Well, I would also say this, Charlie, because in consulting the number of advisors that I did, and then also listening to a lot of my clients talk about their old advisor, they would make the comment of he's just an investment guy. Anytime we talk about taxes, he doesn't really have anything to give us. There's no advice, nothing there, because they've never been trained at all in the world of taxes.
Yep. You know how I wish clients made this decision? By the way, for my listeners, this show is not a way of beating you up and picking on people. Neither Nate or I have ever felt what it feels like to be in our 60s, about to retire and change our lives completely, like he just said. You've been saving and working, and now you're going to not work and spend. So we can't speak from experience. So it's not even fair for us to say, like, why don't you do this better? That's not the point. My point is, I want the world to make decisions based on truth, even though everybody knows the studies on logic and emotions. People make decisions emotionally, and then what do they say about that? Justify it logically, right?
Yes. Make the decision emotionally, and then justify it logically. Yes.
Yeah, kind of. Unless you have like a 5-person family and you own a motorcycle, and somebody can show you the best priced minivan, right? Like okay, what you have doesn't work. Maybe it's fun, but here's what you need, and here's all the places that sell it in the entire world, and this guy's got the lowest price. It shouldn't be emotional at that point. It can be logical. People can make decisions. I mean, dude, when I was shopping for diamond rings, whatever that was, like 19 years ago, the emotional part was like, yeah, what shape do you want? Other than that, it was logic, right? Like, who's got that diamond ring for cheaper or whatever? You know what I mean?
Yep.
How to get off on diamond rings? Tangent time. People follow the rabbit down the hole.
Yeah. Decision making. Yeah. We went to diamond rings on that one.
And it's a part of the job I did not expect, but is really important. Like, sales is helping people know what they should do. and helping them do what they should do. And that second part is way harder than the first part. Like you and I could review portfolios, could review plans, and easily in one sitting be like, here's what to change. It's hard for the consumer to change advisors in one sitting, right?
Yep.
Or tolerate. I'm going to do a whole show on this, but isn't it funny how many times you recommend something from an insurance company? Because right now, there's banks, there's insurance companies, and then there's the market. And at all different times throughout history, that of those three, I mean, you know this. There's people that used to sell their farm and put money in the bank and live off 8%, 9% interest. That was the entire retirement plan.
Each of those areas definitely had their heyday.
Yeah, the market did great, 70 to 99, and now insurance companies who want the business from baby boomers recreated all their products and made them amazing. But how many times have you heard someone say, what if the insurance company goes out of business?
A lot.
Right?
A lot.
How many times, this is a great question. How many times have you ever had a person walk in and say, I have money in the bank and I have money in a brokerage firm. What if one of those goes out of business?
They've never said that.
Never, ever.
No.
And they do go out of business. Insurance companies don't have a history of going out of business. So where the money already is riskier than where we want them to put it.
Exactly.
Something is scary about change for the group of people we work with.
I want to talk about that safety thing if you have a little time here.
Yes, it's important.
Because I also spent some time in the banking industry, not working for a bank, but we would be the company that would come in and audit the bank before the state regulators would come in. So we would basically tell them where they were deficient. And this was on all the IT risk that they had going on, right?
Yeah.
And so we would come in and tell them where they were deficient, what they needed to fix. That way, when the state regulators actually came in, they had it all fixed by then, so they wouldn't get bad grades, right?
Yep.
Downgraded, all that kind of stuff. So, and that was kind of around the 2008 debacle when tons of banks were failing. And the safety of banks versus insurance companies, in my opinion, insurance companies are a heck of a lot safer just for one simple reason, and that's the ability to leverage. Banks can leverage what you give them.
Right.
And my numbers might be off a little bit here, but I'm going to say it's like 9 times. So the idea is if you hand them $100,000 that's sitting in the checking account or a bank or a CD, they can leverage $900,000 back out. And when that 2008 debacle was happening, we think of FDIC insurance as being that safety net. They were asking banks to pay 2 to 3 years of their FDIC insurance premiums in order to shore up all the reserves. Yeah. And a lot of times when the banks that did failed and people did lose money, they ended up only getting about 67 cents on the dollar back.
Yep.
And insurance companies cannot leverage. So that one piece alone makes them, in my opinion, once again, that's just my opinion, safer than banks.
And I don't think people realize that when we work one-on-one with someone, we end up a lot of times showing them a vital signs report or something like that, right? The financials of an insurance company. But if you guys listening don't know that, I mean, if an insurance company, if every single client of a big insurance company called on the same day and said, I cancel, which in the banking industry is called a run on the banks. So if everybody go into a panic and they called up and said, I cancel, and that would total $36 billion, that insurance company has to have $36 billion plus a reserve of 3, 4, 5,
surplus.
6%, and reinsurance behind that. They're paying other companies in case they're hitting hard times or whatever. The banks and the brokerage companies, they each have their FDIC insurance, or I forget what it's called in the Joker broker world, but they have sort of their like backup where everybody's okay as long as not too many of us get in trouble at the same time. But if you look at the history of life insurance companies, the reason they don't disappear is because they're not leveraging, like you said.
Absolutely.
Which is very interesting because they're not leveraging at all, yet 100% of their money is made on arbitrage.
I know.
Which, if you know what arbitrage is basically borrowing low and lending high. It's just that they always have the money and make the spread. It costs them, even the products we offer that people are making 7-8% on, it's only costing the insurance company 3 or 4% behind the scenes, like to pay for the options and things like that. Except so they're paying 3 or 4 and making 5 or 6 and making a killing while being super safe and without all the risk. And people are like, well, what if they go out of business? No. Every single place you have your money right now, possibly even including under your bed, is more dangerous. And you're going to find somebody who's lost it that way, and you won't find it somebody who's lost it by the insurance company going out of business. If it's under your mattress, the house can burn down. if it's in your pocket. Every now and then I'll have to like drive a big wad of cash from my business account to some other account, or you know what I mean? And on the way, I'm like, I'm so glad there's not pirates anymore, you know? Arrgh. So like, I don't like carrying cash. I just want to do everything like electronically. But
Me too.
So yeah, I have this portfolio that I built called the retirement plan that never fails. Have I ever told you about this?
Oh, no, I don't think I've heard that one yet.
So I come up with this thing called the retirement plan that never fails. And I'm like, well, what if the stock market didn't exist? And I just like to say it to people because like someone goes blind or has been blind their whole life and their ear sight is ear sight. Their hearing is better than I like that one. Ear sight and the dollar sign plant.
Yeah.
It's not a medical show. Trust me. It's not the Four Doctors or whatever that thing is.
We should talk about nutrition next.
Exactly. Let's get into that. I do have the financial nutritional plan, by the way.
I know.
Go there. But you remember that guy, the blind guy who was the card shark who came to one of our events? Like his fingers, he's got the most sensitive fingertips in the entire world or whatever.
Yeah.
So if you lose one of your senses, your other senses, you use them better. So I'm like, well, just lose the stock market. Pretend it doesn't exist. And let's build, how would we earn what we need to earn? Because a portfolio is kind of like on the safe stuff, let's make 0 to 2, and on the middle stuff, let's make 4 to 6, and then let's have some stuff we're trying to make 6 to 8 on, right?
Mm-hmm.
What I end up showing people, and it's very similar to in-case income increase, is what if you bought a MEC, you bought an income annuity, and you bought a cash value life insurance policy? All right, let's look at that. Put $100,000 into a MEC. What the heck is a MEC? I have a show called that. Modified Endowment Contract. If you read it on Google, it sounds like it's all bad news, but it's not. It's just a neutral thing. It's just, if you don't want to pay taxes on your growth, don't use a MEC. If you want to pay taxes on your growth and have it be totally liquid, you can use a MEC in the right product. So $100,000, you give it to an insurance company, so it's safer than a bank. Anytime you want the money back, you can have it with no penalties. There's a guarantee, I think, of 2.5% right now at the recording of this show, right? Every year, compounding minus the fee, minus the cost of insurance, which we can keep super low. So even if the cost of insurance is 1.5%, your worst case scenario, we're guaranteeing 1%, which most banks aren't even paying 1% right now, right?
Exactly.
You die, 2 or 3 times what you put in goes to your family as a death benefit with no taxes owed. Some of them even come with long-term care. But I don't know, whatever they're averaging, like 3 or 4, man, that bottom part of the portfolio, you're supposed to try to get 0 to 2 or whatever, right? Like have money sitting in cash waiting for stocks to go on sale or whatever, right?
Oh, yeah, exactly.
You buy a MEC, what's the middle piece? Either indexed annuity or growth annuity, where you're trying to make 4 to 6 with no fees and no losses. 4 to 6 with no fees and no losses is very reasonable for today's annuity designs, not 30 years ago. Today,
absolutely.
And then what's the top? Trying to make 6 to 8%. Most people try to do it in stocks. I just say, why don't you do it tax-free inside of life insurance policies built the right way with the trick that you were talking about? And those have been averaging. So we have the first piece averaging more than 2%. We've got the middle piece averaging more than 6%. And we've got the top piece averaging more than 8% with some companies. Gosh, what's that one that they have that look back and 95% of the 265 different 20-year periods, it made more than 9.5% or something like that, right?
Yeah.
It is. You don't even need the stock market. And I don't say that to people to say you shouldn't have money in the stock market. I've dropped the word should and shouldn't from my personal life and now my business life, which is why I'm a little less edgy, right? The stock market's an unnecessary tool that's not doing any of those 3 pieces better than insurance companies are right now. And that's why the insurance companies being safer is so important, because people are unfamiliar with it. And I would rather, I know that consumers don't necessarily like the process as much as I do. I think it's funny, right? And by the way, I don't do my own sales anymore. Most people work with Abby, and everybody loves Abby because I'm better at this. Right? So I wish people would go through and say like, oh, there's the stockless portfolio, and let me argue back into it that I need $200,000 in the market just to play with. You know what I mean? Like I know it's not better in any way. I need it. I want it. Right.
Like I said, it's just what they're used to. You know, the devil I know is worse than the one that I don't.
I think change is more scary than suffering or than flaw. You know what I mean? Like when people see it. And here's the good news. My listeners are awesome. I mean, many people have called in, and we're working with many, many people. And I think they're the best people in the world because they generally have educated themselves. Right. And you probably find the same thing. Somebody that's studied a lot of your materials and educates themselves comes in, they're like, I kind of know what I want. Right. Yeah. And can you help me do it? And then it's just a joy. Like, sure.
Yes. If someone has had an open mind when they have gotten their education, yes, it's absolutely phenomenal to deal with because they come into it not having any biases.
Exactly.
And I mean, there's a lot of resources we can even point to them where they're talking about the difference between having annuities in the portfolio without annuities. The typical stock bond blend that I was talking about, and how that just isn't working in today's environment. And so if they're reading a lot of those resources with that open mind and getting that I call it re-education. Sometimes it ain't the stuff that that's your problem. It's the stuff that that just ain't true. I think that's a Mark Twain quote.
Yep.
So you have to unlearn certain things in order to learn new things sometimes.
Very true. Well, let's wrap it up like this. You've got a unique process, right? So I usually don't talk on the show about sales process because it's not necessarily a B2C thing, right? Business to consumer.
Mm-hmm.
It is when I'm attacking the sales process of the existing industry and how they kind of steer people astray and ignore all the important questions, like don't ask about long life, short life, rough life, sick life, or the next life, but rather go, what's your risk tolerance? Right? We're already right into securities. The first question, how much could you afford to lose and still stay my client? That's silly. But you've created a unique process, and you've got a name for it, right?
Yeah, the CPR Retirement Rescue Roadmap.
So tell me about that. So how's this different than what someone else would find in any city in Kansas? What's different? What's it like to talk to you or to see you or for someone to work with you?
Well, sure. Well, for one, the long life, short life, rough life, sick life, into the next life that you use, it's amazing because I used to tell people that we covered all of those areas. I just never did it quite as, wordsmithy as that. Because I would tell them that we would cover income planning, investment planning, that we would cover their long-term care, their health care, and then we would cover, but I never said long life, short life, rough life. I never did it that well, but I have started using that. So hope you don't mind.
No, get a grip, get a job, get a clue, get a life.
Exactly.
So silly.
Exactly.
Yep.
And so, so when someone comes in, we never take clients on first visits, right? Because, growing up in the Midwest, there's not going to be any arm twisting or anything like that. I do happen to be a black belt, but, I'm not going to put you in a headlock till you say yes, right?
Exactly.
But no, it's very, very low pressure with us. So you come in the first time, we're basically just going to go through your entire situation as far as what are a lot of your goals, what are your concerns in retirement, and what do you want to accomplish? And of course, then what resources do you have available to you in order to do that? And no decisions are going to be made in that meeting at all. Then once we have all, your statements, your tax returns, and basically everything that you want to have us take a look at to see if you can. So this is what we do. We analyze your portfolio for risk to find out if it's where you want it to be. And by and large, most of them are taking on way too much risk than what they thought they were taking because they usually have that 60-40 blend once again. Then we analyze their income streams to find out whether or not they're going to have enough money to last. That's the number one fear of retirees is running out of money. So we want to make sure that we knock that out. And so we analyze all their, in conjunction with finding out how much risk they're taking on, is their current probability of success with all the risk they're taking on going to be able to last in all the different market situations, right? Yep. 10,000 different market scenarios that we run, out the next 30 years. Are you going to have enough? So we do that. And then, of course, we take a look at their tax situation as well to see if there's anything that we can move or change around to help them pay the least amount of tax they're legally obligated to pay. That's legally is very important. There's been a few things that I've seen that don't fall into that category. And so we always have to educate them on sometimes on what they were doing. But then tax strategy, income strategy, investment strategy, long-term care. I usually see absolutely nothing. No planning done around this. And so we make sure but we want to do it in a way that's not going to cost you an arm and a leg. You talk a lot of times about, life insurance that can be an asset and can help pay for long-term care. A lot of the annuities out there have long-term care features to them as well. And so sometimes I call this the sweet spot. There are some clients of mine that can actually get extra long-term care protection with paying no out-of-pocket costs at all. And it's done.
Exactly.
Done. Taken care of.
I think long-term care should come along for the ride as a thank you from companies saying, thank you for using us instead of going to the joker brokers. Mm-hmm. Think about it. If someone will leave the world of joker brokers, just think about this for a second. They leave the world of joker brokers. They immediately get bonuses as a thank you from insurance companies. They just give you a bunch of money up front, right?
Yep.
They get guaranteed no losses when the market goes down. So they've divorced market risk completely, right? They've partnered with companies I don't know if I can say infinitely safer, but with a safer track record than banks and brokerage firms, right?
Yep.
They get incredible tax benefits, right? Either tax deferral or tax free.
Oh, absolutely.
They get way more money if they die. And then the company's going to be like, and if that's not enough, we'll throw in double income for long-term care, or 300, 400% more money than you actually have that you can use for long-term care. I know, by the way, it's tax-free because it's death. What?
Exactly.
I don't even, it's, again, you and I have never had to make that decision,
Mm-hmm.
but kudos. I mean, big kudos to the bad guys for being as good at you are as marketing, because to convince an entire generation, 3-4 generations of people that inferiority is safer than like fixing all their problems, you got to do a lot of marketing to do that.
Mm-hmm. And I would say this, man, if I feel sometimes if I could just take my brain and put it in their head with all that I know about all the different products, because like a lot of the concepts sometimes are new to them, and that's one of the reasons that they I think have a difficulty making that decision, is they're just not familiar with the concepts. They feel like they need to be a little bit more familiar with those concepts. And it's like, man, if you could just take a look at all of this that I know from like my perspective and then put it into your head, and now you're looking at everything I know now from your perspective, getting ready to retire. It's like I'm looking at your situation with everything that we've put into place, and if I was sitting in your chair, I'd be like, I have no worries for the rest of my life financially.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if I won the lottery or received an inheritance right now, I could snap my fingers and build a financial plan that I would never have to think for the rest of my life, and it wouldn't involve a single stock, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think you and I have discovered that. We have discovered that how do we put our brain inside their head? It just takes longer than we want in a dream world. It's called a podcast, right?
Yep.
People call up that have heard, like you mentioned, you've heard every single one of my shows. I'll have people call and say, I just finished episode 60, or by the way, I'm just about to do a series of episodes on what it costs to wait and why. Yes, listen to a lot of episodes, but if you do something next year instead of this year, here's the huge difference it makes in your life, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm not encouraging people to wait. I'm more encouraging people to there's a book called The Empathy Effect where the guy's like, just tell the truth. Like when things are hard, tell the client it's going to be hard, but it's worth it, right? Like it's hard to listen to 30, 40 hours, 50 hours. You can probably do it, especially if you have a commute, but man, is it worth it? What you're earning per hour as an hourly rate in savings for taxes or fees or losses is like doctor lawyer level. You know what I mean? So it's worth. I want to say something. Have you ever thought of this question? Can you afford the stock market?
Ooh.
And here's what I mean by that.
I like it. I think I know where you're going.
Can you afford the stock market? So there's somebody, I've been working on some new language because it is so hard for people to like see clearly and make decisions. I think the best teachers, well, I love language, obviously, from all the titles of my shows and Long Life, Short Life and all that stuff. I love words and I love language. So I said to somebody recently, how about this? Let me ask you your goals in long life, short life, rough life, sick life, next life. Like, do you want guaranteed income or maybe income? Do you want increasing income to cover inflation or just flat income? If you die, do you want your spouse to keep getting income? Do you want someone else to pay your long-term care, or do you want to pay it out of your own pocket and risk running out of money? Do you have any desires at the end of your life to leave an inheritance, which is either whatever's left, a certain minimum for each kid, or I don't need income, let's maximize inherit, whatever it is, right? Just simple questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we looked at the current portfolio. Like you said, you do your portfolio review.
Mm-hmm.
And simply answered a simple question, which is, do you want to leave things the same? do you want to make changes, or are you happy with right now? You have maybe income not guaranteed. It's not increasing, or we certainly can't know that with a stock portfolio, right? You'd have to be making money every year consistently for the rest of your life. We don't know what's going to happen for the spouse. No long-term care is covered, and you might run out of money before you die, so there's no inheritance. Are we leaving it alone? And they say no, right? And say, would this be fair? Most people don't walk in the door and say, I've never met you, I've known you for a week, or I saw you at a seminar, I'm going to give you all my money right now on the first appointment. Most people don't do that. Nope. Right? So I said, would it be fair for me to come back to you and say, I'm going to look at the least amount of your assets, the smallest amount of money that you'd have to transfer over to cover every one of these goals. The guaranteed increasing income you want, making sure it continued for your spouse, making sure that someone else covers your long-term care, or there's a big bunch of extra money if you go in long-term care, right? And then making sure there's this minimum death benefit you want. I'm going to come back to you and tell you the minimum, because it's such an easier decision. So if you're worth $1 million, I might come back and say, for $450,000, you can have everything you want. A lot of people give us the other $550, but do anything, leave it where it is if you want to, right? If you love the brokers, but here's what it would take to have what you want. And then here's where the question comes in, because you've seen this. Haven't you seen a customer, a client, who says, this is what I'd like in income when I retire? And you go to their portfolio and it would take not just every single dollar they have, but more than they've saved.
Oh, yeah.
And this is where the question popped into my mind is I said, the second thing that may happen is I may come back to you and say, with the money you've saved, you can't even afford what you want now. And that tells you a couple things. One, you probably need to keep working. But the second really important thing that this tells us is you can't even afford to be in the stock market. You can't even afford to have these portfolios. You're not even in a position to make a decision between safe and the stock market because you haven't even saved enough money yet.
True.
Does that make sense?
That makes complete sense.
Because
yeah, I mean, I thought you were going to go like one way with it, which it was sort of kind of that way, but you went a completely different way with it, I think.
Because I believe, here's the other thing. Shouldn't people really do all of their saving as a young, like they start at 18 or 20, all of their saving in a deferred income annuity until they have the paycheck they want at age 66, and then, oh my gosh, the extra money I can put in the stock market because now I can afford it, right?
Exactly.
What you and I see is the opposite. Before I can afford it, let's only use the risk model because the guys who sell it say, when you're younger and have more time, you can afford to lose crap loads of money and make it back, but lose 7 years of compounding so I can play golf, right? It's You're in the wrong tool all of your life, and then at the very end trying to make a difficult decision to switch over to the right tool. So really the question, can you afford to be in the stock market to a young person who's still working in the accumulation phase, or to the person who's got a nest egg and they're looking towards that 30, 40 years of unemployment we call retirement? We got to find out whether you can even afford to use the stock market as a tool.
Yeah. I mean, I hear you there. I'm 39. I've been investing in products like what we talk about, the cash value life insurance, annuities, all that, since I was probably 31. And I have the smallest amount of my total portfolio in the market.
Yeah. I know my Acorn account's at $346 today. So every time it hits 10,000, I buy an annuity or whatever, right? Or I make a contribution to, and that's what I said on my last show is every tool has strengths and weaknesses, right?
Yeah.
I don't hate the stock market. I like that the stock market will take $3.22 when I go somewhere and buy an expensive coffee drink or whatever. You know what I mean? I love it'll do my roundups. It just doesn't work for me for long-term. It doesn't work for retirement planning. It's just a gambling tool, basically. Anyway, two advisors rant on and on and on. That's what we're going to call the show.
Sorry, we're just ranting. This is like two advisor rant, double rant. There we go.
Well, tell people how to get in touch with you, because here's the thing. Most of my listeners who call in, my team works with them virtually, right? I get on the phone call, have a conversation, find out if we can help them or not, get to know them, thank them for listening, get some of their details, and then my team takes over and works virtually through Zoom like you and I do or whatever. But some people really do still like to go to someone's office, to go see them, to have a personal relationship where you can show up to events and family parties and things like that, especially if they happen to live in your area. I don't know, how big is Kansas? Are there other states that you work in, or is it just Kansas?
Yeah, well, we're right on the east side of Kansas. And so Lawrence, Kansas, Topeka, Kansas, and Kansas City, which Kansas City includes the Missouri side as well. So we have offices in all three of those locations. Perfect. And and Kansas City is huge. There's like, I think last I heard, this has been a while ago, though, over 2 million people in that. And so I say huge by Kansas standards, I guess. I'm sorry.
Like a very big mouse.
Well, I come from a town that has maybe 150 people left in it. So that's why I say that 2 million is huge.
That's right. So how do you want people to get in touch with you, guys? I totally encourage you to work with Nate. I don't get paid. I think Nate's awesome. I'm trying to start a revolution and change an industry that's behemoth. I mean, that's to say we're going to take over for Edward Morgan Lynch is a monster thing to say, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
It was probably a monster thing to say we're going to get a package anywhere overnight somehow, right? And FedEx pulled it off. Someone's got to start as a visionary and with a big dream and go for it. So as many great, good people, good advisors, winners who are on the team across the country is fine with me.
You got it. Well, let's see. As far as my company website, that's millerretirementgroup.com. So you can find me on there. You can read about our firm. If you are in the area and do want to meet, you can set up an appointment through that website as well. I do have a podcast as well. I'm not 150 episodes into it like Charlie. I think I've got 5 total on there, and we release them.
Baby.
Yeah, you got to start somewhere, right?
I remember 5.
Yeah.
I think 4 and 5 are a couple of my favorite and most popular episodes ever.
Yeah, because you're probably the most passionate about it. Like you were still in that. I'm going to change the and just unfiltered.
I look back sometimes. I'm like, I can't believe this stuff. I would remember the is your advisor smarter than a 5th grader? And I'm talking about the birth size of babies and driving back and forth across the country, like 40% back, and I'm like, dude, that's some research.
Yeah,
I had a lot to say.
All right, yeah. So the name of my podcast is retirementrescueradio.com. It's the name of it's Retirement Rescue Radio, but you can find it at retirementrescueradio.com or on iTunes, Stitcher, you name it. It's all over there. Let's see, I'm on Twitter at nmiller301 and Facebook at Miller Retirement Group would be that one. If anybody does want to get a hold of us at the office, we have a toll-free number, 844-401-4012. And Oh, also, if you wanted to ask questions in relation to the podcast, I've got a email address set up called asknate@retirementrescueradio.com. And I do have a book that is out called the CPR Retirement Rescue Roadmap, nice. Where you can kind of get, I take you through the journey of some of the things that I learned while I was consulting financial advisors, some that I've also picked up, while I've had my own practice here as well, and kind of what we see needs to be involved, or the thought processes that need to be involved when it comes to retirement planning, rather than just, having investments while you're working.
Yeah. So people,
and that's on Amazon. So
reach out to Nate and say, I want CPR.
There you go.
So retirementrescueradio.com, millerretirementgroup.com. Either one of those are going to lead to some contact pages where I can get in touch and say, hey, I'm in Kansas City or Topeka or whatever.
If you read the book, the last chapter does actually tell you why I named it all the CPR Retirement Rescue Roadmap, while the report I gave is Resuscitation Report. There's a whole theme to it.
Salting. You're salting the end of the book. I like it.
Don't read that last chapter first, though.
This is Oprah after the break. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to give away a car. It's under your seat right now. Awesome. Well, any final thoughts on, we didn't have a topic. We just ranted and went where we went and went as the wind took us, which is fine. Any last thoughts on the state of the industry or changes you want to make, or encouragement to the listeners?
Encouragement to listeners, I'd say keep getting educated. Keep listening to Charlie. I know, Charlie, I think, I've read some of your reviews, and also listened to the rant about the 2-star rating that you've got.
Yeah.
And I'll say, one, I enjoy all of the crazy antics, right? Edutainment, whatever, that's really what it is.
Awesome sauce.
Yeah. And I enjoy all that. But here's what I tell a lot of people. I'm like, yeah, Charlie may be goofy as all get out, but I think underneath all that, dude is a genius. So I would say keep listening to Charlie. Have an open mind and get the planning done.
Yeah, get it done. No matter what. Thank you for calling me genius. So that's a very nice thing to say. So I'm going to.
He didn't pay me to say that either.
I did not pay. Neither one of us are going to pay anything on this one. We just want to give and help you guys. We pick up clients. That's awesome. That's how we get paid. Thank you, Nate, for being on the show. I love you as a friend and as a professional. I respect you, and that's why I'd be willing to have you be the only person that's ever been interviewed that doesn't work in partnership with me in some way.
Yeah.
So I'm going to piggyback on what Nate said and said, if you haven't had a second opinion, or you are all, lots of your money's in stocks, bonds, and mutual funds, either you're managing yourself or through some sort of a money manager, especially if it's with a money manager, let's take a look at that and see if you can even afford the stock market. You know what makes decisions a lot easier is my friend who lived in a one-room studio, and then his wife got pregnant, and then all of a sudden decided they needed 2 bedrooms. It's just necessity. They can't do it anymore. If we can help you see that you cannot even afford to be in the stock market, no matter what it might average, that just may make the decision a lot easier, so you can open your eyes and go, what else is out there then? Teach me about the other stuff, right? All right, Charlie Jewett, Renovating Retirement, Nate Miller, signing off. Thanks for being on, Nate.
Thank you.
Renovating Retirement with Charlie Jewett.
But that's all, folks.